Thank you for being with me again. Appreciate y'all being here. So today we're going to talk about Luminar Neo, and conveniently they did a upgrade today. So if you already have the program, make sure to download that update. You should have gotten an email from Skylum today. And I have to say, we have to start today with some prayers for our friends at Skylum, because they are based in Kiev, Ukraine. So they are, according to their email today, they're all safe. They have, a lot of them have relocated outside of Ukraine, and others have moved around, I guess, to different areas. But so far, everybody's okay, and obviously working remotely for the most part. So we're going to go over the program, and I'm going to point out some of the cool updates to Neo. Well, not updates, but the new features of Neo. And then we'll go over all your questions. And the other cool thing they announced with the upgrade today, for all of the sales of Neo, they have not been giving, the affiliate discount has not been honored. But from today until the end of March, if you have not purchased the program yet, now is the time, because you can buy it for, I'm not even sure what the sale price is, I forgot to look today, but you can save another $10 with my affiliate link and discount, which I'll put up at the end, and I'll also put it in the blog on Thursday. The replay will be up sometime tomorrow morning. I always say sometime. I usually get up fairly early, but just in case, you never know with technology. So I do plan to do that. So let's get rolling. So first, I've opened up the program as a standalone. I tend to use it as a plugin. You can do both. When you install it, it will install as a Lightroom plugin, a Photoshop plugin, and as a standalone. You know me, I like working with my layers, so I like working from Photoshop. However, there are some cool features with the new Neo as opposed to Luminar AI. They have added kind of like a layers feature back to it. It's not like the same kind of layers we have in Photoshop, but it still is going to layer, and I'll show you that shortly. So a couple things to notice in the general interface, if you're familiar with AI or even Luminar 4. I should probably do this as a plugin because that's what I'm more familiar with. But anyway, if you use it as a standalone, it does have a catalog feature. This is not meant to replace something like Lightroom. It is not meant for thousands and thousands of photos. But if you wanted to do batch editing, you can do that in here. That's not something I've really played with a whole lot, but I know people who do events and weddings and things like that. It's a great feature that is available here. You can, you click over here on the left to add photos. You can see all the photos in your catalog, which just are mostly from a class I did. These are kind of like some stock images that they give you in here. Some sample images you can see that are these. So I'm going to X out of here, and I'm going to go into it the way I'm most familiar with. So in here, let's see. So this was actually the email from today. So they have, this is 1.0.2. This is not the big first upgrade that they're working on, but this has some minor updates and some bug fixes. So you can now sync your adjustments in the catalog tab. You can copy and paste edits in there as well. Image 3D transform, I have not really used that at all yet, but they've updated that. So that's a new feature. They do have now the capability of working with PNG formats, and I'm going to show you why that's a good thing shortly. They've increased the frame per second rate when using the drag slider and any of the effects. So they all have, different sliders you can adjust, and it now works smoother. And you can add a folder and files using add photos on Windows. Again, that's not something I ever do, but it's definitely something to explore. I'm still learning some of these new things as well. So they do have some bug fixes. If you already have it and you've gotten the update, you can update it either through the email link, or when you go into the program, you'll get a pop-up. It'll say there's a new update available. And then on Mac, you'll click Neo in the top menu bar and choose for updates. On Windows, and I'll show you where this is. Again, click the Luminar Neo logo and then go to help and check for updates if you don't get the pop-up. So with that, I'm going to open an image, and then we're going to start going into some of the features. A couple of things that are not in here yet. Let's see. There is currently not yet a dodge and burn or a healing tool. Those were in Luminar AI. They have not started yet, have not put that in yet. That's due in the first big upgrade. And the other thing to remember, and I'll show you this as we get in there, they used to, in Luminar AI, they called presets templates. Well, now they're back to calling them presets again. And if you're going to use a preset, you want to do that before you start making adjustments, because a preset is going to override your adjustments. So I'll show you that when we get in there in a second. All right. And there will be, if you have Luminar AI templates, there will be something coming to convert those to Luminar Neo. Again, with everything going on, the date right now is up in the air, but that will be something coming down the line. And you can always go back if there's a template that you really like. You can always pop back into Luminar AI and use that there as well. So one of the cool new features, and I always duplicate my layer because Luminar does not make its own layer. So we're going to go into Filter, Skylum, and Luminar Neo. One of the new features is dust spot removal. And this is a really old picture. This is from my old Canon 20D. This is an unedited JPEG, because back then I was shooting JPEGs. This was quite a while ago. And you can see there are lots and lots of dust spots in this image. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our dust spot removal. And actually, the first thing I did to this when I edited it, you can see there's a lot of noise in the background. One of the few things that I'm not as impressed in the Luminar products is their denoise feature. So I would take this first into Topaz Denoise AI and run that, and then bring it in here, which I'll show you in my finished image that I did do. But let's get into dust spots. So that is featured under the Erase tab. So I'm sorry, before we start, let me go over the interface again. So before you had templates up here and edit. Now you have presets, which looks just like the template panel did. And you can still go through and choose a category. And again, you want to use one of these first if you're planning to use a preset, because this will override any of your edits. So then you would go to Tools, which if you click Edit is going to bring you to Tools. And then we're going to talk about edits in a minute. So let's go into our Erase. And this is where you can remove power lines and remove dust spots. And we're going to be doing power lines in a little bit. So I'm going to click on Remove Dust Spots, and it's going to do its thing. There are no other controls. It just is going to do it. And then if you needed to erase something else, you could do it up here manually. But this particular function does a really good job, I find. And boom, there they're gone. All those spots we had up in here, down here, over here, they're all gone. There isn't anything else I need to do as far as spot removal. This did an awesome job in just a few seconds. So a lot easier than using the healing tool and you know, having to go in and do every single spot. So that's that one. So from here, now we're going to go in and I'm going to edit this photo the way I normally would. I'm not going to edit every photo because I want to cover more features, but so that you get a feel for how this all works. So from here, we're going to go up to develop. And this is where you find kind of like your basic adjustments, your exposure, your contrast, highlights, shadows, black, whites, and you would just click on here to open that section, each one all the way down through transform. Okay, so, and here I'm going to go into my light. I'm going to leave the exposure. I'm going to add some smart contrast. I'm going to bring my highlights down and my shadows up a little bit. I'm going to come down to color and I'm going to add a little bit of saturation and a little bit of vibrance. And then we're going to come down to the next section, which is Enhance AI. And this is kind of an, I don't know, it just does like an overall really good, I don't know, just makes your picture look better. It does a whole lot of things in the background. And I always use at least a little bit of that. You can see how noisy this is up here. So definitely this needs some denoising. And then because this already has a good sky, I'm not going to replace the sky, but there is a sky enhancer slider. And what that will do is make your skies a little bit bluer, give you a little more contrast in your clouds. So you don't want to push it too far because then you start getting that kind of fake look. I could probably back off a little bit on that. And then I'm going to come down to structure. And I'm going to add a little bit of that. And I like to use structure and details instead of sharpening. I have for a long time. I've used, before I was using Luminar, I was using the Topaz AI Clear in Studio 2, which does details, clarity, and denoise all at once. And then sometimes if it needed more details, I would add a little bit small and medium details, which I don't really need to do here, but I do that quite a bit. And then we're going to go to the color tab. I'm going to come down to HSL. So we have our hue, saturation, and luminance. And I'm going to go into saturation. I'm going to add a little bit of orange, a little bit of yellow. This was in the fall, so the grasses were turning that nice golden color. A little bit of green for the trees. And I'm going to take down that blue just a little bit from the sky. I think we're getting a little too much up there. Okay, and then we're going to come down to mood. So what moods are LUTs, which stands for lookup tables. So the difference between a LUT and a preset will override all of these things like I mentioned earlier. A LUT does not. This just adds a color, kind of a toning to your image. And I like this Long Beach one for just kind of crisping up the colors a little bit. But you can see, and the other thing they need to update in here is it used to, if you scrolled over these, you could see them change. Now you have to actually click on it, which is kind of tedious. But so like if we chose, say, 1960 and gave it a second, it will, it didn't really do a whole lot for that one. Let's try something else, see if we get, you can see it's making a few changes, but nothing too dramatic. That one's a little bit more dramatic. But I do like this one, Long Beach. And these were also in Luminar AI. I don't use it on every image, but sometimes it just kind of pumps up that color a little bit. And then the other thing that I like to use, and if you're into portraits, there's some really cool stuff here in the portrait section. Super contrast. And the reason I really like this one is it lets you control the contrast individually between your highlights, midtones, and shadows. So regular contrast is going to overall, change your contrast, where here you can target just a little bit here and there to your individual areas of the photo. And shadows, I just did teensy bit. And that's a basic edit. Now, if you wanted to go back and change one of these things, so let's say we want to go back to color. If I click on color on this tools panel, it looks like I didn't do anything. That's because with this new one, you can actually add a function a second time. If I want to change this one, if you go into this Edits tab, there's everything I just did to this image. So here's the color that we changed. So if we go in here and go to our saturation, there's those changes I made. So if you wanted to just change something you already did, you want to come back to in the Edits panel. So this is where it's like adding layers, because they're not, it's not engraved in stone. You can come back and change it. With Luminar AI, you could not do this. Once you applied it, that was it. That function was done because it was a cumulative application. This is not. It doesn't actually process it into the file until you apply it and save it or export it. So Kelly's asking, what does Neo do that Luminar AI doesn't? That's one of the features. This is one of the biggies, that it lets you come back in here, change things that you've already done, and have the option of, if I wanted to add structure again, I could come back and add more of it. Certain functions you're probably not going to want to do that with, but there are times when, you know, you want to apply something and then maybe now you want to apply it and then mask it to just a certain area. Maybe this, you know, one area needs a little more structure than the rest of the image. So you can apply a global adjustment and then you could come back in, and once you move a slider, you get the icon for adding a layer mask. You don't see that until a slider has been changed. Okay, let me take a look at the questions. So when you make a copy of the original image, if you make it a smart object, are you able to go back to the edits? No, that's not how this works. As far as I know, I don't use smart objects very often, to be honest, but this is because it's an independent program. This isn't like working on changes in Photoshop. You would need to do all your changes here, as far as I know. So you should have mentioned camera profiles, which you have to do first before any develop adjustments. Yes, if you want to do that, you would do that first. So you should do that, you know, however you would normally do that before you get into developing. AI doesn't remove spots, power lines, doesn't have layers. No, they do not have layers. If you go into edit, well, it does, because here's the erase and here's the dust spots. I can't change what that just did, but if I still had more spots I wanted to do, I could either come in here and select them, or I could apply it again. So it does still have that same functionality here. No, it does not work with Photoshop Elements. Yeah. It is a Photoshop program. Although I know with AI, I think there was a way to get it into Elements, but I don't know if it works as well. And I don't believe this one is available for Elements at all. I did keep Luminar AI. Luminar 4, I actually deleted today. It hasn't updated in my Photoshop menu because I didn't close Photoshop yet, but I did get rid of Luminar 4 because I haven't used that in forever. I did keep Luminar AI for now in case I do want to go back to any of the my own presets that are in there, because I can't bring them over yet to Neo, but once I can do all those things, then I'll get rid of it. Okay, I think that covers most of what we had right now. So I'm going to, so now to apply this, because I came from Photoshop, I would just hit apply, and that will take me back to Photoshop. And it takes a few seconds. You can see it's working. And there you go. So there is the before and the after, and I think I might have turned some things off because that doesn't look like it did when I was over in Neo, other than the dust spots. So I think I messed something up when I was clicking on all those layers. So let me open my finished one. Yeah, I think I somehow did something weird when I was talking. Okay, this file does not have it. I'm trying to open my TIFF file and it doesn't want to open. Love technology. All right, let's try it this way. There we go. So this was my original, and I with Studio AI Clear and Precision Detail. So you can see that got rid of my noise much better. And then this is the rest of the edits in Luminar. And I think I went a little too far on the clouds, but did I discard the edits? Yeah, I think I clicked something, Susan, accidentally. Yes, Sandy, welcome to my home. Hey, we all have that issue. We finally moved the host for my website this weekend, and for the first day, my emails from the store, people buying notes, and I wasn't even getting my receipt. Neither were they. So, but I called Microsoft yesterday, and that seems to be fixed. So, hopefully, fingers crossed. All right. So that's basically the dust spots and a basic edit. So let's close this one. Wow, 4:23 already. Holy crap. Time goes fast. This may become a little bit longer tonight. All right, let's open our next. Why am I getting a weird thing over here? No, I'm trying to open it, and I usually can just double click it from my other screen, and it's giving me an odd thing. All right, so this is a very bad image that we're going to try to fix. So I'm going to duplicate it, and we're going to go into our Luminar Neo. So one of the other new features is called Relight AI, and this lets you light your foreground and background separately. So it's different than shadows and highlights because it's not just controlling shadows and highlights. It's actually going to relight based on the depth of a subject, and you can control that. So let's go in here. So we're going to go into the creative section, and we're going to go to relight. And you can control the brightness in the near, the far, and then the depth. So near, I'm going to go all the way to 88. I'm going to bring this way up, and you can see we've really opened up the light on that. And then the brightness in the far, because this is so over bright, I brought it like all the way down. And now you can play around with the depth. And this was almost pretty good where it was. I only went a little, but I'm going to push this just so you can see how it moves. If I go this way, it's receding. And if I bring it this way, the darkness is coming forward. So you can see how that's changing based on the depth in the image rather than shadows and highlights. And this may not be the best illustration, but it was what I could find that would work for this at the moment. And then in the advanced settings, you can also de-halo if you're getting any haloing around the edges, and you can also control the warmth near and far. So near, I just added like 1, and then far, I actually backed that off a little bit in the background. So then I'm going to come back up to my develop, and you can still do some highlights and shadows in here. So under light, we can still do highlights. So I'm going to pull that down, and I'm going to bring up the shadows some. So now you are just controlling those highlights and shadows. Oh, there you go. It's like, wow, it didn't look like it did anything. Took a few seconds to catch up. So you can see, I mean, it's not a perfect photo, but it surely rescued something that was really pretty awful. So then I would come down to my structure, add a little bit of structure in here. color, I pulled the vibrance back just a hair. I'm going to add a little bit of details, just to the small details to bring it out some of the fur. And then under landscape, there's a foliage enhancer. So I added that so it pulls a little more green into your foliage. And then this is one of those times when I decided to try the relight again and see if we could pull even a little bit more. So now you can see I've come in here. That's just a default setting, but I'm not going back to my first one. I'm now reapplying a new version of this feature. So I brightened up the foreground just a little bit more and brought down the background a little bit more. And I made the depth this time 56. And then I'm going to come down to my super contrast. I did a little bit in the highlights and a little bit in the midtones. And I usually use these at fairly low numbers, both the contrast and even in details. You don't want to push it too far because then you really tend to get some odd looking things going on. And then apply. Why don't I have the line on the right that moves the tools up and down? It kind of hides, I think, because I wasn't seeing it then. I think unless you're moving the cursor, I'm just scrolling with my mouse wheel is how I'm getting around, but I'll check that when we go back in, Carol. I mean, we went from that to that. Is it perfect? No, but it sure is a heck of a lot better if that were your prize-winning goat and you really wanted this picture and that was the only shot you had. And then these little white hairs, I just cloned with a healing brush because I thought that looked a little. And then I dodged just a little bit up here. So you can, you know, tweak things a little bit more. But I want to get through all of these features, so I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. All right, so next I want to show you the power line removal and what it can do and what it can't do. Do you think you'll be doing future presentations, changing a photo from day to night, adding rain? Yes, yes, Stephanie, I will. I love doing stuff like that, and I've done a few like that in the past, but we'll definitely get into some more of the creative stuff. So, what's that, dear?
James Soldier asked if the Hayes help when you were working.
It might, James. I didn't think to try that, I don't think. But yeah, dehaze probably would help a little bit on that goat image to clear up that background, especially. All right, so let's copy this and go into our Neo. You're demonstrating Neo as a standalone or going back. I prefer Photoshop, and that's how I typically use it. All of the functions are the same, other than in the standalone you have the catalog, which you don't have in the plugin. But all of the features are exactly the same otherwise. Just this brings you right to the edit panel. You don't get the catalog. Okay, so this one, if you notice, has two power lines. So we have this main power line and then this little one that is got a busy background behind it. So let me go into my erase and I'm going to click remove power lines. Sandy, the catalog is the catalog you can create in Luminar if you wish to. I mentioned that at the beginning. It is not meant to replace Lightroom. You cannot load thousands and thousands of photos in there like you can in Lightroom. It's more designed for project work if you're doing batch editing and things like that, because you can sync edits from one image to another. I don't do a lot of that kind of stuff anymore. Like back when we were doing auto racing, I would probably have used that. But I don't really do that much of that kind of stuff right now. All right, so we can see that main power line is gone, and it did a good job in front of the silo and in front of the trees. It did not touch this one at all. So that one, I tried using the erase tool and I did not like it at all. So if you click on erase and you're selecting, if you go across, you'll see that red line, and then you click on erase to make it process, and it does not do a very good job of blending, in as far as I'm concerned. So I went into Photoshop because like this part of the tree now is over there, and if the color is reasonably consistent, let's try it in front of that. There it does an okay job, but if you've got a busy background, this erase tool is not the one to use. So that's power. So I'm going to show you several ways of how this power line worked. What's that, dear?
Nolly said that when he showed it to us, we get everything.
Yes. When, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Vanelli, who works with Skylum. He is a portrait photographer based in Florida, and he now runs the daily coffee chats and does a lot of educational things for them. He mentioned that when he was doing the affiliate demo too, that it's not the best thing for here. Is there a way to undo? Yes, right here on that tool, you can just undo that tool, but it does undo the entire tool, not just those few things. That's the only downside. It doesn't do like a Control Z where you can back up one step, but you can reset a tool. So let's show you a different example. So our next barn, and this is a raw file. So I'm going to open it this way. It'll take a second because it's a raw file. So you can work with raw files in Luminar. If you want to bring it in as a standalone, it will accept raw files. And then obviously if you're doing it in Photoshop, you're going to get the camera raw first. Normally I would do basic stuff usually in Lightroom and then come in here. But this is more about this, and then I'll show you the final edit that's completed, because this one took me a while. So in this one, we have power lines in front of the sky. We have a power pole, which runs partly behind this fence post. And then we have barbed wire fencing. So let's see what it does here. I was like, Some parts I liked, some parts not so much.
Would you tell them while you're waiting?
Yes, dear.
Ask questions for everyone in the panel box?
Yes, if you're typing into the chat box, please select the to everyone so that everybody can see the questions so they know what I'm answering. Just to save some time, I appreciate it. Okay, so let's go in here to our erase and remove power lines. And another thing to keep in mind too, if you have an image like this where you might want to replace the sky, do the power line removal first, because it is definitely easier for it to remove power lines in front of a blank sky than in front of a very busy sky with clouds. So I would do that for. So Sandy, yeah, I'm kind of giving you what I like and don't like as we go. I think the program is great. I think it's great for general editing as well as some of the creative stuff that it can do. I find I do a lot in Luminar now that I may have done in Photoshop before, but there are certain features that, like this one, if you look at what it just did to our power line removal, did a great job on these lines in front of the sky. Where this one came down in front of the barn, it did not get the yellow, that protective, whatever, caution thing that they put over it. And it also, as well as removing power lines, it removes some of our fence. So the image looks a little weird. So this is not the best example of power line removal. But remember too that these programs are artificial intelligence based, and as they keep learning, they're going to keep getting better. Just like the Topaz stuff did, this stuff is going to keep learning. They're going to keep feeding images in here. And if you have a really weird image like this, I got to send this one in. Send them to Luminar. There's a contact, I believe, on the website. If not, you can even send it to Vanelli himself. He'll take them. And it's just vanelli@skylum.com. And tell him why you're sending it. And just say, this is one that send the original photo and say, this is one it did not do a good job with power lines or whatever. And they will feed these into the system, and it will definitely help, the product keep getting better. Because you make a duplicate in Photoshop, would you get rid of the power line that you want to and then mask out in Photoshop the other stuff that you don't like? Well, because it took away a lot of the fence that I want here, I can't get it to only do that part of it, unless I'd use the erase tool, which I could do here. So what I did instead was I did the entire image in Photoshop. Hang on, let me get this one open. And this took me a long time because I also got rid of that power pole that was here, all of the things that were in front of the building. I even took out the little white sign that was over there. If you look at the original, I took that out. I took out, some of these weird things that were going on in here and cleaned it up. So this took me, and I straightened it, and then I took it back to Luminar after I did. So let's show you what I did. So I did do these on a separate layer, and I did replace the sky first. So this is Luminar, the basic edit. I replaced my sky with one of my own. You can see it kind of took out a part of the line when I did the sky replacement. And then I skewed it a little bit in Photoshop. And then I did my healing and cloning on a separate layer. And that was the little sign there. You can see I got rid of. This took me a long time. Probably took me about 45 minutes to get that really cleaned up. Yes, Phil, I did mention that at the beginning. Skylum is based in the Ukraine. So the main part of the company. Vanelli is in Florida, so he will reply to your emails. But yes, if you put in like a help ticket, they may not get to you as quickly as normal just because of the situation right now. But a lot of them have gotten out of the country and are working remotely. So that was this version. Now I've got one more I want to show you with the power line. And this is another old image. This is an unedited JPEG from the Southwest. And you can see we have two lines. And this one is crossing a subject. So let's see what this one can do. Filter, Neo. And when you first open it, the image looks very flat until it kind of finishes processing and brings in all the colors. So let's go to our erase and remove power lines. Robert said, are there selection tools to restrict the remove tools? There are not. You would have to just use the erase tool or do it in Photoshop. Those two, power line and dust spots removal, is just, it runs its course and does its thing. So you can see it did an okay job here. And this has actually improved because in the first, the beta of Neo, I tried running this and it did a horrible job. I mean, really it botched this area big time. So this would be easy enough to use the erase tool, oops, and just come in here and do that and erase, and that would go away in a few seconds. Did I hit it? Yep. So that was easy to fix. This I would do the clone tool in Photoshop, so you could line it up with the edge of this building, and then I just went across, and I'll show you my finished image. And when you erase, are you erasing pixels? No, this would be working the same as the healing tool in Photoshop. It's not really, even though it's called erase, it's not erasing something, it's healing it, and so it's using the pixels around it to correct it. Oops, I forgot to cancel that, so the other one would actually open. Sorry about that. There it goes. Okay, so this was my finished image. So I came into Photoshop and I fixed that, and then I went back to Luminar and did my processing and cropping, and you can see I cloned out in Photoshop. I used a square brush to get rid of these two, and I've had back when I used this image in my back when I was teaching elements basics. There is actually square brushes, because somebody said to me in my class, gee, wouldn't it be nice, you know, we're trying to do with a round brush, wouldn't it be nice if there were square brushes? And there actually are, and they are under the legacy brushes. There are square brushes. So you just click one, make it the size you want, and I found that if I angled it like 2 degrees, it made it at the right angle for this roof line. And then I could just use the, I don't want the brush tool. I actually should have gone to the clone tool and then reselect it and then just stamp and clone along there. And that got me to that. So you could get rid of that kind of stuff. Okay. What's that, dear?
I recall you do it as a Photoshop, and it wasn't that easy in Photoshop either.
Oh, to get rid of it? Yeah, it was.
Wires and everything.
Yeah, it was a little time to do that in Photoshop, but it wasn't too bad. So what I did was, you know, you clone, use your selection key like on the edge of the building, and then you could line it up and then just keep going across. So it wasn't too bad. So let's close all of these. So that is the power line removal. All right, so next I'm going to do, I just want to show you the sky replacement again because it's really, really cool. Open with. And this is a raw file. This is completely unedited. I'm going to duplicate that. And obviously, you know, I'm going to put a new sky in here because it was a pretty icky, just gray, cloudy day. And you can bring your own skies into Luminar as well. And there is a way to bulk load them, because like I have all of my skies that I sell in the store, which I think are 7 or 8 sets, loaded in here. And if you do it through the menu here, you can only do one at a time. I will, when I post the link in the blog Thursday to the webinar, I will post a link to that sheet. And I'm going to drop myself a note. Loading skies. I will send that, and it has instructions for both PC and Mac. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go to, I'm going to start with a preset. I'm going to go to presets, and sometimes you find ones that aren't necessarily the category you think you might want, but I went into macro objects and I found one that I liked, and it's this one called Razor. And I thought that did a pretty good job of crisping things up, made some nice adjustments there. And then if a preset is too strong, you can bring back the opacity of it right here. So we're going to do that. And then I'm going to go into my tools. If you wanted to change the light gray dirt down here, would you do that in Photoshop? Yes, I would. I would clone that first. I always find that doing healing and cloning gets the best result usually if you do that before you get into changing colors and things. I don't know why, but I've found that to always work the best. So yes, I would do that, Susan. So in here, what was that, dear?
I would hide it.
He would hide it. Yeah, well, that's what she's saying. If you wanted to clone that out, yeah, I would do that first. Yeah, he would just he'd put a cow in there or something, knowing my husband. So we're going to go down to, where am I going? Underdeveloped. In our light section, I'm going to pull the exposure down just a little bit. I'm going to add a little smart contrast, bring the highlights down a little, shadows up a little. And you notice I generally don't use drastic adjustments. You don't usually need to get crazy with these. Some images need more than others, but a lot of times you really don't. And this is where I like to do my details. Hang on a minute. I get to the question in 1 second. Medium. We're going to go up a little this way. And then we're going to come down to landscape. We're going to add a little bit of green to our trees and grass. And then we're going to go to the fun part. We have Sky AI. And this is where you can, and when you open this, so it's probably not a good idea to have as many as I do, but works for me. So you can see there are a whole lot of skies. So these up top here, these first 7 or 8 sets come with the program. These ones that I titled with Luminar are ones that I got through the Luminar X membership. You get free sets of, sometimes it's skies, it's templates and other things. And so I've brought all those over, and then these were some freebies that they gave out along the way, and then my skies. So in here, I now have all of my sets of skies. They're all just put together in here. So I'm going to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row left. Is that the right one? And nope, that's not it. Because when you click it, it shows the name here, but that's not the one I wanted. So they moved around. Of course. I'm looking for one of my more dramatic skies. Let's see. It's called. It used to, in Luminar AI, if you hovered over them, they had the names popping up. So I'm hoping they bring that back as well, because it makes it a whole lot easier when you know what you want to look for. Let's go with that one. Why not? It's slightly different, but we'll work with that. So once you're in here, then you just kind of click over to the side and it'll close that box. Now you can start making changes to your sky. Is the sky replacement any different in Neo versus AI? Not really. There's a couple, I think, little minor tweaks in the way the positions work, but nothing major. Basically, it's the same. Holly said, when you use a preset, you're taking away the ability to edit the raw file. And if the answer is yes, isn't that a downside? Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't gotten a clear answer. Well, when you come in here, because I started in Photoshop and I'm bringing it in here, you're really not working on a raw file anymore. You've done your basic tweak either in Lightroom or Photoshop, with Camera Raw. So that's why I duplicate my layer, because this is a destructive program. It's not a non-destructive process. And I guess the option would be to doing smart objects. Again, I just don't tend to work that way. That's just not part of my workflow. So yeah, I that would be my answer, I think, Holly. And yeah, if you ever go on any of the daily coffee breaks, they do have on Fridays, they have like open Q&A. That might be a good place, because then you'd have Vanelli and a bunch of the other guys who are on there pretty regularly that have some good answers on there. Yeah, I think Phil is usually in there too. Let's see. So thank you, Phil, for answering. Stacking presets is not a function of Neo. Correct. You can only use one preset at a time. Okay. So let's see. Do we have any, when you're talking about the layers in Photoshop, are you indicating that after you hit apply that the picture goes back as a layer? Yes, only because I duplicated my layer before I came to Luminar. Luminar does not create its own layer, Don. Or Michelle, sorry, or Michael. I'm trying to read all these things quickly. So that's why I duplicate my layer before I come in here, so that my Luminar stuff will be on a separate layer when I get back. Yep. If you join the Luminar Insiders on Skylum.com, that's a free group. That's not part of the membership, the Luminar X, but you can, anybody who owns a Luminar product can join in on the coffee breaks. All right, let's see. Oh my gosh, 4:52. So from here, you can, you always want to check your horizon. Usually the product does a pretty good job of getting the horizon in the right place, but sometimes depending on what's at the horizon, you might need to move your image up and down. So you can move it down that way, you can move it up that way, and you can see where my horizon line actually is. So even though it put the horizon line in the right place, maybe I want to get more of the clouds that are at the top of the image. So you can move it down as needed. You can go side to side, but then it's going to change the size of your image because otherwise it wouldn't fit. If you're moving it side to side, you would have blank space. So you can change that. And then you can also change the horizon position that way. The mask refinement is especially when you have trees, if you're getting like haloing, this is where you would fix that. And you can see it has some preset, it kind of automatically adds that much, but you can adjust those as needed. And scenery lighting is one of the things I love about this. Not only does it replace the sky, it will relight the scene to match your sky. So this one, it kind of already was there, but if we chose something like a sunset, not that this is going to look good, but just for an illustrative purpose, and you can see I would have to adjust my horizon a little, but you can see how it put that kind of rosy color over the whole image, so it looks more realistic. And then you can change the strength of that relighting if you want to deepen it even more, and the saturation of it. And if you had a person standing here, obviously you wouldn't want the person to get all pink like that, so you can relight the human, and it does a great job of finding human faces and people, and then taking that away. Added late in Luminar AI was reflections. So if you have water, it's actually going to create a very realistic reflection. It's not just a mirror image. The product analyzes the clouds and reflects them the way they would actually look naturally, not just like mirror imaging it. So that's really cool. And then sky adjustments, if you needed to defocus your sky to match an image or add grain or haze, or you can warm it up and brighten it up. So I could add more brightness. You could add more warmth or less warmth as needed. And the one thing that is not in here, and I'm hoping they add back, is they call it, in Luminar AI, it was augmented sky. And they had a bunch of things in there like birds and a hot air balloon and the space shuttle. And some of them were kind of weird. It was like, there's a giraffe in here. Why is there a giraffe in here? But I like the bird one, and you could add birds. So what I did was, when I first did this image, and I'll show you the finished one in a second, I would use my bird brushes, some of my own, and I, with the notes today, because there aren't like textures that I'm using, my first set of bird brushes, there are 6 brushes in there, and they're part of the notes, so that's worth more than the price of the notes anyway. So I had gone back to Photoshop and used my bird brush, but now that they can do PNG files, this is where kind of layering comes into play. So over here on the left, where it says layers, if you hit that plus sign, you can add another image. So earlier I was playing and I brought in my watermark, so I could add that. And I can then change the size of this. All right, so you can change your opacity. Where'd my little handles go? When I did this earlier, there's like little dots in the corner, so I could resize it, because obviously I wouldn't want it to be this big. Okay, well, of course it's not going to work right now. Let's try bringing in the birds and see if that works. So I'm going to just right click this and remove that layer. Click this And I'm going to, these come pre-built in here, some bokehs and light leaks and things. So I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to go to my folder that we're working with. Oh, good grief. That's what happens when you try and hurry. Never works. Don't hurry. The webinars today. So here is a PNG version of my birds. I'm going to click it, open, and are they in there? Are they hiding? Shows that they're there. There it is. All right, so there, I guess the dots just take a while to catch up. There they are. So I can resize my image, and then I would bring up my opacity so we can see them. And then if you wanted to rotate it, again, resize that. I guess I was just in a hurry before. Gave it time to finish loading. So you can move some off of it, and then you can move it around. So now that you can do the PNGs, you can add them right here, which is kind of cool, because you couldn't do that before. So you could also use the layers to bring in a texture and play around with it, and then you can change your blending modes right here, just like in Photoshop. For birds, I would leave it at normal, but for a texture, you could change that here. Yeah, they were in the burn. What's up?
Are you moving? Are you showing your change layers? First original has layers, or are they Photoshop or Neo?
I think I missed some of that.
JS.
I can't see that. Oh, there it is. You're showing your change layers versus the original as layers. Are these in Photoshop or Neo? Right now, I'm still in Neo. So this is letting me use layers in Neo, which you.
I'll answer that for you.
Okay. So then you would apply, and again, that will take me back to my Photoshop, and then I'll show you my one I actually did before that had the sky that I really wanted to use. So we're almost at the end. I'm pretty much on time. Maybe a minute over when we're done. And okay, hang on one second. Let me open this one, and then I'll read the question. Yeah, they did have lightning and stuff in the augmented sky, so I'm hoping that that will get added back in as well. And sun rays, yes, that was really cool too. All right. Are you thinking you'll use Neo and layers with textures more than TS2? I usually do my texture work. I mean, I use TS2 for some of the presets, but if I'm applying like my own textures, I do them in Photoshop. I just bring them in as the individual layers, and that gives me that option of turning things on and off and playing and moving them around. And I'm just more used to doing it that way, so I think it's a faster way for me. You can add, your textures to TS2. You can bring them in individually to Luminar, but because I like to work with multiple textures, that I think it works easier that way. Can you mask the PNG bird layer? That's a good question. I didn't pay attention to that. We'll try that in 1 second. Let me open one other image that I did. I'm going to show you the finished, excuse me. And this was another barn that I did. This is one of my own skies. This was another kind of gray day. And then a different, this is also part of that bird brush set that you will get if you purchase the notes. So let's go back in real quick and let's duplicate that. And I didn't pay attention honestly, so that's a good question. I just got it this morning like you guys, so I've been playing a little bit. Do you put in your own skies as you would in Photoshop? Generally, I do. Every now and then, I have an image that I happen to find something of Luminar's or that I like better, and I might use it. Is this one bird? No, this is the bird brush is all of these. This whole flock of birds is one bird brush. And this I did do before today, so I used the brush in Photoshop. But if we add it here, let's add this layer again. And all right, so there's those. Yes, you can mask it. Here, the masking icon is there. So you could, oh, it masked all of them. All right, well, let's undo that because I was on the wrong thing. So let's resize that. You can tell I don't do masking here very much. So let's go to the mask. So I was brushing it. So let's hit erase. So if I wanted to get rid of one brush, one bird, there you go. So you can get rid of, so you can mask out what you want. And then brushing it would brush it back in. And there you go. TS2 is, yes, Studio 2. The webinar did start at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So we are just about wrapping up, Omar. It has been recorded and it will be on my YouTube and Vimeo channels tomorrow. You'll get an email from the Zoom system. Usually it's in the afternoon sometime when it sends it, and I'll put the link in there, and then I'll have it in the blog on Thursday. Holly, was there a question somebody asked you that you wanted to ask? You can type it in if you want to. Can you blur the layer too? You can. It's got a softness slider. Let's see if that does anything. Oh, that's the brush. Let's go back to the layer. Properties, opacity. I don't think so. You can change just the opacity and the blending mode. I don't think you can change the softness of the brush if that's what you meant. But you can't blur the layer if you wanted to. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate your help. It's hard to know every little nuance on a program, especially when it's fairly new. And I know some of you people have probably used it more than I have because I've been busy with so many other projects right now. I'd like to pick your brain about some features of Neo, specifically about layers. Right now, it seems that only textures can be set up on a layer. I don't see a way to add a blank layer. That is correct. This is not full layers like Photoshop. Even Luminar AI did not have blank layers. So because there isn't, what would you do on a blank layer? Because you can't do brushes like you would in Photoshop, which is typically what I would do on a layer, or fill it with color or things like that. Those aren't, it's not meant to totally replace Photoshop for some of the creative things, but for your general editing and getting into some of the later creative stuff like this, I think it's great. I think it does a really great job at editing, and I do most of my images in Luminar now. I have been for a while. So yeah, this is really, it's a good way to get you started. And as I always tell people with any software, just kind of jump in there and try it. You can't break it. You're not going to hurt anything. You know, don't save over your original files, and you know, you can always delete a layer, delete a, you know, an edit. I do like having the edits where you can go back. I didn't do anything in this one, but you know, once you do something, you can come back and you can change that, or you can add something again, which is really cool. So I think that about wraps it up. Can you mask on a layer and leave the underlying image untouched? Yeah, like if I mask the birds off, you know, you still see the sky underneath. So masking works the same as it would in Photoshop. There you go. I think that takes us almost to the end. Let me throw up, I have a sale I'm going to do for you guys. Let me open this. Let's cancel that. Get back to Photoshop. And This is my Skylum affiliate link. And like I said, from today till the end of the month, if you're looking to purchase, you can save $10 with the code Meredith Images. I'll put this in the blog, and I'll try and put it in, remember to put it in tomorrow's email as well. And then I'm doing all my textures, brushes, ebooks, 33% off with the code webinar33. And then you can get my notes for this webinar for the usual sale of $5 for the first week. And you will get the 6 bird brushes, the actual ABR brush files. And there you have it. Thank you, everybody. The hour goes so quickly when we're doing these. I hope that gives you all a good start on Neo, and definitely try it out. I really love it. And have fun with it. If you think of any other questions, you can always send me an email. I love, doing that. Holly, thanks for letting me know if there's a house for sale in Tennessee. Well, there are a lot, and they are going real quick. So you really should get in touch with a realtor and let them know what and where you're looking. And it's like most areas, things are selling before they even get on the market, half of them. So hope you do get to come to Tennessee. We love it here. And I will see you guys all soon. Thanks so much for being here. Have a great evening. Take care.